All right, let's talk about Sigmund Freud. Now, I know what you're thinking. We all feel like we know Freud, right? But today, we're going to look at him through a totally different and, frankly, a much more surprising lens. I mean, for more than 100 years, people have been arguing about who this guy really was. Was he a scientist discovering universal truths, a revolutionary thinker who changed the world, or was he something else entirely? The debate, it seems, never ends. But the perspective we're digging into today, well, it's so powerful because of who it comes from. This isn't just some rival or critic, this is Carl Jung, the man who was once Freud's closest collaborator, his chosen heir. So this isn't just some academic disagreement. It's personal, it's profound, and it changes everything. So before we can really appreciate Jung's critique, we have to get on the same page about the standard story of Freud, the one we all learn. He's the father of psychoanalysis, the man who put the unconscious on the map. And his ideas, my goodness, they are everywhere. The Oedipus complex, repression, Freudian slips, this stuff didn't just stay in psychology textbooks. It completely saturated our culture, our art, our literature, the very words we use to describe ourselves. He was an absolute titan of modern thought. There's just no question about it. But this is where Jung just takes a completely different path. He argued that if you really want to understand Freud, you have to stop seeing him as a timeless scientist. Instead, you have to see him as a very specific product of a very specific time, the suffocating world of the late Victorian era. And Jung's diagnosis of the 19th century was just brutal. He saw a culture completely at war with itself. On the one hand, you have all these prim and proper public ideals, respectability, a kind of stale religiosity, all this rosy sentimentality. But underneath that shiny surface, Jung saw a dark reality of repressed desires and just rampant hypocrisy. Jung saw this whole thing as a giant pressure cooker. The culture became so dishonest, so fake, that it was absolutely bound to produce an explosion. And for him, that explosion came in the form of figures like Nietzsche and Freud. They weren't just thinkers. They were a necessary reaction. They were the antibodies the culture had to create to fight its own sickness. And this reframes Freud's entire life's work. His theories weren't some universal science of the mind that applies to everyone everywhere. No. According to Jung, they were a historically conditioned weapon, forged for one reason and one reason only: to attack the rotten hypocrisy of the late 19th century. So if Freud's whole mission was a kind of historical demolition project, what did his methods look like? I mean, think about it. If your goal is to tear down a false reality, what kind of tools are you going to use? Well, Jung labeled Freud's main approach as a relentless reductive analysis. What that means is taking the highest, most noble achievements of humanity, art, philosophy, religion, and reducing them, boiling them down to their most basic and, let's be honest, often their ugliest instinctual parts. In that phrase right there, nothing but, that's the key. According to Jung, that was Freud's signature move. A beautiful piece of art? It's nothing but sublimated sexual desire. A profound religious experience? Nothing but a lingering father issue. It's a devastatingly effective and deeply pessimistic way to expose any and all hypocrisy. And apparently, Freud saw himself this way too. He absolutely loved Voltaire's revolutionary slogan, "Crush the infamous thing." For Voltaire, the infamous thing was the corruption and superstition of the old regime. Freud basically picked up that same banner and aimed his battering ram, psychoanalysis, at the infamous thing of his own time. What's so amazing about Jung's assessment is he's not really criticizing Freud here. He's actually casting him in this almost heroic light. Freud was the great destroyer. His job wasn't to build a beautiful new world, it was to tear down the diseased old one. Okay, so this leads to a really critical question. If Freud's theories were essentially weapons designed for a specific historical fight, what does that say about their scientific value? Are they a universal explanation for the human mind? And this is where Jung is just brilliant. He carefully separates a theory's scientific accuracy from its historical purpose. Let's take the idea of infantile sexuality. Scientifically, Jung thought it had very little value, but historically, he saw it as a necessary shot at the heart of the fake, sentimental Victorian ideal of holy motherhood. Its purpose wasn't truth, it was attack.
This is how Jung arrived at his conclusion that Freud's work was a partial truth. He used this incredible medical metaphor. He said it was a cauterizing agent, like a red-hot iron used to burn disease out of a wound. It was absolutely necessary for the sick, degenerate material of the Victorian mind, but you would never use that tool on healthy tissue. And for Jung, applying Freud's harsh worldview universally was actually dangerous.
So all of this builds to Jung's final, incredibly nuanced verdict on Freud. If he wasn't really a scientist in the traditional sense, but he wasn't a charlatan either, then what in the world was he? To explain it, Jung makes this crucial distinction. He separates a prophet from a prophetic figure. A true prophet, he says, offers a new path forward. They build a new system of values. They tell us where we're going. Freud, Jung argued, did not do that. He was something else. He was a prophetic figure. A prophetic figure doesn't show us the future. Instead, it perfectly embodies and acts as an answer to the crisis of its own time. It's both a symptom and a destroyer. And look who Jung puts in the same category: Nietzsche and the Great War itself. All three, in his view, were the explosive end of the 19th century's illusions. And this really gets to what Jung saw as the ultimate limitation of Freud's work. He used one last great metaphor. Freud was like a dentist who was an absolute master at drilling away decay. He exposed all the rot. But he offered no gold filling to put in the cavity he created. He left a clean wound, a void, but gave us nothing to rebuild with. And that, of course, leaves us with the critical question that defined the rest of Jung's life, and maybe our own time as well. After the great destroyer comes through and clears away all the old illusions, what do you build in that empty space? And with what tools? That's the real question.